Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Charlie Smith with us, and Charlie has gone through several cycles here from banking to commercial real estate development in the retail zone, and now he's into development of careers. So Charlie, it's great to have you. Can you give us a little history of how you got to where you are now?
Amazing. Thank you, Bruce, for having me. The industry holds a very special place in my heart. I started actually in banking in the early 90s. I worked for a small savings loan. Actually, it was the first savings and loan that was merged by a federally assisted merger of a Bronx and a New York-based, Manhattan-based savings bank. And I got out of school in 1988, and I went to work as a commercial loan underwriter, an analyst actually, underwriting deals, and spent about half a year doing that before I became a loan officer originating deals. And I did that for about half a year when the S&L crisis started. And so the bank, as I was sitting there in my office originating financing for a myriad of borrowers, whether they were co-op converters in New York City or factory outlet mall developers in Kansas, excuse me, all of a sudden the regulators came in and started really tightening the straps on S&Ls, and I went from a real estate analyst to a workout guy. And so the bank had made a bunch of loans all over the United States. They made a bunch of loans for fees. Somebody was out making a bunch of kind of poorly underwritten second mortgages that the bank had ultimately taken back. And as the market was getting worse, the bank was converting a lot of the troubled assets into real estate. So they created a workout group, of which I was a part of. And back in 1990, I was working for some middle-aged bankers in New York that didn't want to travel too much. They wanted to go to their kids' games. So they sent this young guy named Charlie Smith out to deal with all these real estate projects. So I came to California and foreclosed on a hotel at the age of 23. I ran about 500,000 square feet of office space at LAX, and I built my first parking garage called Wally Park, all under the guise of trying to help this bank stabilize these assets so they could sell them. Fast forward, April, I guess it was around 1991. I'm sitting at the Marriott in LA at LAX on Century Boulevard, and the general manager of the restaurant comes over and says, "Charlie, you have a phone call." Because I lived on the East Coast, so I stayed in the hotel a lot, and he knew me. And I said, "A phone call? That's odd." And it was from my boss, who said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, Charlie, but the bank just got taken over by the government. They walked Ken out in handcuffs, and I don't know if I have a job, and I don't know if you have a job." And so I sat here in California with a massive credit card debt and the bank kind of underwriting my lifestyle, and had to figure out what to do. And so, I got into that space early on through these cycles. I think as we look at any cycle, one of the things I've learned through the many cycles I've been through since the early 90s is every cycle has created an opportunity, not just for me, but for others. And the distressed real estate market became very prevalent in the early 90s, and I got to participate in that. So I started working for the servicers that took these bank assets, and because I'd been running real estate, I started to sell commercial real estate on behalf of the bank all over the United States as a workout guy. I've been negotiating leases. I've been signing construction contracts. I've been doing TIs in office space. I've been negotiating union contracts at hotels. And so I kind of built a little bit of a knowledge base that allowed me to kind of go out and do that. And then the company that I was the servicer that I was doing that for started buying assets. And so, they saw the value that was being afforded by these RTC, FDIC auctions that were going on. And so they hired me to take the own real estate that they were ending up with out of these portfolios that they would buy. And then in 1995, kind of wanting to kind of allocate a little bit more of the efforts and the knowledge I had to being more of a participant in the upside of those deals, I went to work for a company called West Trust in 1995. They were a distressed asset buyer. We bought distressed assets, then we bought single assets when everybody was buying distressed assets, and then we became a full-time retail development company in about 2002. 2004, I bought half that company and went on a tear with a partner of mine building retail shopping centers all over the state. And that's how I got to where I am now. A very, very sordid and exciting career.
Wow. Okay. So right now you still own a couple pieces of real estate, or at least one, the world famous Nut Tree, which is between San Francisco and Sacramento. So that's a nice piece of property.
Yeah, we sold off the big shopping center and then we kept the strip of land on the I-80 freeway. We built about 6 buildings up there. We've sold a few of them. We still own a few of those buildings up at the Nut Tree as what I call kind of my legacy project.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting project. So then you went into coaching.
Yeah, so as a result of a lot of the challenges that I faced in my own personal life, I decided that, I hadn't gone through all of these challenges in my personal life to build another shopping center. So I turned my attention to developing people, and what I really found was that, the most valuable piece of real estate in the entire world is the 6 inches between our ears. And it's the thing that holds most people back or launches most people forward. So I developed a mental performance leadership and culture workshop program where I go in and I train teams and organizations on developing their mindset, their confidence, their resilience, and really bring the mental performance side of training to the real estate side of the work, matching the people with the product.
So give us a little clue of what one of these programs might look like.
Yeah, so I've got about my signature program is called Master Your Mental Performance. Bruce, thanks for asking. It's about a half day workshop. It runs about 3 hours, and what I deliver in that workshop are what I call the 5 foundational skills for developing your mental performance. So we'll get into how do we train our mindset. We'll get into what is an elite mindset versus an average mindset. What is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? How do you train that? We get into self-awareness. We'll talk a little bit about, kind of how we self-regulate, how we advertise to ourselves, what our self-image is. We get into routines and habits, really important about how we frame and shape our day. AM and PM routines. We'll develop some strategies around how to start and end your day for efficiency. There's a lot of overwhelm, a lot of busy people today. We really need to manage that stress in a way that's productive. And then the last two things that we train in that program is how to develop unshakable self-confidence. I think it's the most misunderstood. I'd say confidence is the number one trait for all human performance success. It's also the most misunderstood. And then last and most importantly, we deal with resilience and adversity tolerance. Because look, in every market I've been in, there's always been challenges, whether it's been the Fed, whether it's been interest rates, whether it's been retail modifications, from small mom and pops up to the big boxes, and then from the big boxes shrinking back down, and the retail cycle changing. Every business that we're in, whether it's real estate, industrial, retail, multifamily, will go through cycles, and adversity is coming for all of us, and we can either run from it or we can develop, kind of a buffalo mindset of charging into the storm and facing it and growing from whatever adversity we face. And so that's kind of the last bastion of mental performance, is helping people develop that adversity tolerance, to see adversity as their advantage and not be afraid of it, but see it as an opportunity for growth, right?
Absolutely. So I'm curious, this is a very well-developed program. How did you come up with this?
I'm a framework guy, right? I mean, you know a little bit of the trajectory of my career now. I've always been in the space of knowing that there are strategies and tactics that I could adopt. I mean, I go back to my commercial real estate career. We talked a little bit about the introduction of AI and how it's shaping and changing the world. When I started, true story, as a financial analyst at Dollar Draw Bank in 1988, there was a loan officer, VP named Ricardo. Ricardo sat in his office at 50 Main Street. He smoked unfiltered Pall Malls at his desk. He had a green accounting ledger sheet and a number 2 pencil, and he would underwrite real estate deals. He would look at P&Ls, he'd look at cash flow, and he'd do projections on his little sheet with dates at the top. And when I came in, we had just started with spreadsheet softwares, and he would underwrite one deal in 3 days, and I'd underwrite 3 deals in one day. And it was. And you were either going to grow or go. At the end of the day, he had a lot of knowledge, skills, and abilities as it relates to his real estate expertise. But if he couldn't translate that into and use technology to help him do more of it, he would become slowly moved out and moved past. And that's what happened. So I've always been of the mindset that we don't lack ability, we lack strategy. So what I did is I did with anything. I started to understand how I taught myself these things. I researched the best in the business that I would learn from. I believe, and for anybody, no matter what industry you're in, whatever segment of the real estate world you play in, multifamily, industrial, retail, office, asking for help is a strategy. It's not a weakness. There's somebody who's further down the road in their career that's seen cycles that we can learn from. And so I leaned on the best. I found, a guy named George Mumford who worked with the Lakers and the Bills as a performance coach back in the 80s and the 90s. Another mentor named Brian Kane who has a certification. And then I went through those things and applied my own personal experience to it to create these frameworks to teach.
It sounds fantastic. It sounds really good. So you've talked a little bit about AI, which actually going from the spreadsheets now, it seems like AI is giving us another kind of leapfrog forward into using AI to help with commercial real estate. That seems like a very natural step for us to look at.
It is. I think, there was a time in this world when all people thought we needed were faster horses, and at the end of the day, technology has always served us depending on how we use it. And when I look at some of the things that my forward-thinking clients are doing, they're embracing it. We looked at a case study of JP Morgan Chase at one of the strategy meetings that we had earlier this year, and just the amount of money that they're spending in using AI. And the question is, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who's using AI to leverage themselves and kind of take that no joy work, that email traffic, those marketing strategies. They're using those AI tools to their advantage so they can get in front of customers more and do more of the forward facing things. I've been asked many times, having been involved in almost $1 billion of real estate transactions in my career, what's the key to success in real estate? And Bruce, it always boils down to two things and only two things. It's relationships. This is a people business. You've got to know people. You've got to know what drives them. You got to know what they want, right? People don't care what you know until they know you care. It's a relationship business, always has been for me. I don't think AI will change that. And information, that's the other really tangible thing that we've got to develop a knowledge about. We used to have to drive sites and we used to have to, take out our Thomas guides. You probably remember Thomas guides that you had in the back of your car, right? I mean, and how much time it took to find the street and find the cross street. And then we got GPS. And so if we can expedite and if we can accelerate the way we can understand and gather information and then refine and process that information, we're going to make better decisions. And one of the things that I think will always match is we'll match what the technology tells us with what the human experience has understood for a long time, which is, you got to touch the dirt. You got to feel the dirt. The technology will tell you something. I think there's an old adage, right? Trust but verify. We've still got to get out and talk to the brokers, talk to the tenants. We've still got to get out and talk to the lenders, but use AI, use technology as a way to accelerate learning and to accelerate the things that, real estate's very process driven, right? I mean, when I was developing, we had a pipeline of deals, we had a pipeline of acquisitions, we had processes and systems. And I think AI allows you to kind of accelerate the way that you organize that data, the way you review that data, so you can make decisions more expeditiously, which allows you to look at more deals, process more deals, and hopefully be more productive, right?
Absolutely. So where do you think we are? Obviously, we're always cycling someplace. So where do you think we are in the cycle right now?
Well, I think it's very sector specific, and I think it's very industry. You've seen multifamily go through its cycle. You've seen suburban office go through its cycle. And I think where we are right now is at another inflection point. I think depending on the segment that you're in right now, I think it's not a time for, we're not in a corrective cycle, so we haven't seen a lot of correction. I think we're in a period where there's a lot of kind of stagnation, if you would. We're not really growing really fast, but we're not really in a recession or we're not consolidating. So this is the time in the cycle where I think caution is the word of the day, being judicious about what you do, but most importantly, staying true to what you do. One of the things that sometimes this period of the cycle can do is it can challenge you to kind of try to do something different to get that yield, stretch for that yield that you want to have, and you get outside of what you normally know how to do. So, in all of these cycles, I've always tried to remain disciplined about what my metrics are, where we got our return, what the kinds of projects we did were, and stay true to those. So I think it's a real interesting time in the cycle.
Well, it sounds like it's a good time to talk to Charlie Smith and see if you can help them out.
Yeah, this is an absolute great time to look. what do I do for organizations, and what is the most important thing that companies have? At the end of the day, it's our people. It's the people that have their rear ends in a seat, the people that are on the phones with our clients, and everybody today that I deal with is facing the uncertainty of the world. There's always uncertainty. I've made a living. I have probably accelerated my career the fastest in the biggest times of uncertainty, because when other people are playing it safe or being cautious or not doing anything, it's the people that look for those opportunities. If you go through my cycle, you've got to look at adversity as your advantage. Fear has two acronyms. You can face everything and rise, or you can forget everything and run. And at the end of the day, when there's uncertainty, we have a choice. We can put our heads in the sand, or we can pop them out and say, hey, and look around. And so I would say that, and I would challenge, people in this market to look at where their strategic advantage is, where their real competitive advantage is. People don't buy what you do, they buy outcomes, what you can provide to them. So when we're in this business, if we're really providing value add to our customers, whoever they are, whether they're residential tenants in a building, or they're retail tenants in a commercial shopping center, or they're in my office building, I think this is in these times, that forward-facing, front-facing, client-driven, value-add, service-oriented culture are the ones that are going to thrive.
Well, so where can people get a hold of you, Charlie?
So I'm on LinkedIn, of course, post a lot of content on LinkedIn. Charlie Smith is my handle on LinkedIn. Social media at Charlie Smith Speaks is my Instagram handle. And then you can go to www.charliesmithspeaks.com. You can learn about my keynote speaking that I do for offsites, annual programs, workshops that I run for organizations, and the limited amount of one-on-one coaching that I do, Bruce.
Say that one more time. What was your website?
charliesmithspeaks.com. Speaks.
Oh, Speaks. Okay. All right. Well, Charlie, it was great to have you. What a great guest you are. I think we need to talk again very soon, just because the cycles are continuing to go, and I'm sure you're going to have some new information that we need to know fairly soon.
I will, and I think one of the things I'd like to leave your audience with is to remember that they're the author of their own story. This world is going to try to tell everybody who you are and what success looks like. And one of my founding platforms is that it's my life and it's my pen. And I want everybody to remember to be the author of their incredible story for their life and their career, Bruce.
That is a fantastic finish. I love it.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.